What's up, everybody? This is Post-Production Pie with srlounge.com. Welcome to another weekly edit. Now, this week we're working in Lightroom 4, and this is the image that we're working on. And you know, we've done a lot of images from basically professional portraits to couple sessions to weddings to everything imaginable, architectural stuff, landscapes. But what we haven't done a lot of is kind of shots that, you know, we're shooting on a day-to-day basis, like family photos and things that we're doing to document our lives and how to work on those images and make them better. So I wanted to have, just make sure that we're always including that in our weekly edits. And so this week we're working on one of those photos. Now, this is a photo that I took of my son. His granddad is behind him, pushing him on this swing. And basically it's a nice little sequence. I shot these all on a Panasonic GH3, and we have quite a few sharp photos. We have quite a few blurry photos just because they're moving so quick. It's hard to get those focal points right on. But what I often like to do with these types of shots is slap on a 50mm lens and get really close. Now, I took a few different shots, and I'm not really a stickler when it comes to getting these perfectly sharp when we're getting this close, because it's really, for me, more about the action and the subject matter. And in this shot, we have a beautiful expression, and I love everything except for the fact that we missed the focus. It just didn't focus quite quickly enough for the shot. But that's okay, because it's still a great shot and I want to keep it. And there's a way that we can produce it that's really going to bring the attention off of essentially the lack of focus. Now let's talk about real quick how it was shot. I'm going to hit I to bring up my information. So again, this is on the Panasonic GH3. We shot it on a 25mm lens, which is an effective 50mm crop. Okay, so it's a 50mm focal length, or effective focal length, because that micro four thirds lens is a 2-time multiplier. So 2 times 25 is 50. It's a 1.4 lens. We shot at 2.0. Is at 1/1000th of a second. ISO 200 is the lowest native ISO on the GH3, and 1/1000th of a second is fast enough that we're going to freeze our motion, but you'll notice that it's not quite, well, we basically didn't get the focus right. It's doing autofocus, and as soon as the subject pops in the frame, it kind of missed it. But that's all right. I saw the image and I'm like, I still dig it. I love it. I want to keep it. And I'm not a stickler when it comes to, having technically perfect images all the time. I don't think anybody should be, because I think what makes an image great isn't so much the technical side, it's really the subject matter and the story. And you see that all the time with photojournalism. How often do we look at images in a newspaper that aren't sharp, that have terrible compositions, but the stories, that what it's conveying is worth publishing? So I want to remind you guys of that, and we're going to go through and process this using the Lightroom 4 preset system. Once again, we will go through everything and tell you exactly what's being done for those that don't have the preset system, but if you do, you guys can follow along. All right, so getting started, this is going to be a quick edit, and here's a little tip. If you miss focus but you have a great emotion and a great story behind an image, one of the easiest ways to process it to make it look good is to process it as a black and white image. The other thing it's going to do is going to bring focus off of these kind of random haphazard colors in the image. We have these reds and blues and whites and kind of just all these different distracting colors that really don't lend itself well to like a consistent color scheme. So the first thing I'm going to do is drop into my mixology. We're going to start with an extra soft black and white portrait. And then what we're going to do is basically go down and kind of do a little bit of tweaking. Now, I'd like this to have a nice kind of vintage fade to it, because I want to add some film grain as well. So I'm going to go down to my antique curves, and we're going to add just a black and white vintage punch curve, which is going to kind of fade out those shadowy areas. We're basically clipping the shadow detail. All right, we're going to drop into our special effects, and then we're going to add some film grain. So I think I'm going to go with medium film grain on this. And that's basically it. We're going to do some fine tweaking now, but with 3 clicks, we're very close to our finished image. And notice that the black and white plus the film grain, I mean, whenever you have film grain to begin with, it automatically kills a lot of the detail. And because of that, we are essentially, we're not focusing on the fact that we missed our focus in this shot. So it's working out much, much better than originally with this color. So here's that original color. Here's where we're at now. And now I'm just going to do a little bit of fine tweaking. Okay, so over here on the right side, let's go over the different settings that we have so far. So basically we've taken contrast up a little bit to 25. Highlights have been dropped to -30 and whites to -30. That's just to soften up those highlights on the face. It's that soft portrait preset kind of going into effect there. Now we have clarity at -25. I'm going to raise it just a bit to, let's go up to about 15. Maybe even 10. And you can see that it's adjusting the preview actually while we're doing that. Just because since it's out of focus to begin with, I don't want to drop clarity so much because it's already soft. Now here's our tone curve, and you can see what this curve is doing. It's basically clipping our shadows, so we're showing no shadow detail below this point. We're showing no highlight detail above this point. So I'm going to just make some modifications to this slightly, just to kind of pull down the midtones a little bit, pull down the shadows a bit. And I want to actually raise, sorry, mid-tone shadows. I want to raise the deep shadows just a tiny bit. And then we're going to actually darken our deepest shadows. We're going to basically just pull it down to add a little bit of extra contrast to it. And that's it. Not a big, huge adjustment, just a very minor kind of tweak. The other thing I'm going to do is go down. We're going to check out as far as our vignetting goes. We can tell you what we're doing as far as sharpening too, because we didn't go over that. We have our standard sharpening settings of 70, 1.5, 10, and 30. It's not going to matter much for this image because it's out of focus anyway, and we're adding a lot of grain. We do have noise reduction. I'm going to kill that because we have grain. We're adding grain. Why do we need to reduce noise? And now I'm just going to continue scrolling down. We're going to go to the lens corrections, and I'm going to drop in a little bit of a vignette, just very soft and subtle. And we're going to do a couple tweaks here. So if we were working in Lightroom 5, I'd probably use my radial vignette tool, or the new radial tool basically, to add a vignette. But basically what we're going to do is just burn down the edges a tiny bit more just to draw less attention to it. Now I'm not going to adjust much. I'm basically pulling this, by the way, from the preset system, but all this is just a -1 exposure brush. So we're going to just pull down the exposure on this top side right there. I'm going to also go into here. We're going to pull down the exposure just of, you know, granddad's pants and stuff that we don't really need to bring attention to. I'm going to go all the way up to the corner. And what we're going to do is just adjust the strength of that. So after it's painted in, I'm going to pull it back a bit, maybe about to a half a stop, just to bring in the attention a little bit into the center of the image, into our subject matter. Okay, and that's about it. All I'm going to do is I want to do one thing just as a little check. Because we missed our focus, it's a little bit weird that his hand's in focus right here as opposed to nothing else in the frame. So what I might do is just go and grab one more brush. I'm just going to go down and grab this heavy desharpener. And we're going to go and paint this in over the hands. Now what this is going to do is it's going to basically kind of make everything in the image the same, you know, unsharpness. So it doesn't bring any attention to these areas that are sharper than others. I'm going to pull it off the side of his face so we don't cover that at all. And we're just kind of matching the sharpness value. So that way everything kind of is equally unsharp, and we essentially end up having just a nice vintage image with this shot. Now what I'm going to do is just tone it back a little bit until it matches up with what we have in the foreground. Okay, so let's do it right about, I think right about 69, 70. This is a pretty good range right here. All right, and I'm going to paint down a little bit right here too, because it looks like his jawline and his neck a little bit too sharp. Okay, this is starting to look pretty solid. We're going to do the same thing up here. And that's looking great. So we have a nice image. We have kind of this now black and white vintage image with a lot of grain, and now we're focused really on the subject matter. You know, the fact that it's not sharp or completely in focus doesn't really matter. We still have a great story going on. Here is the original image, and here is the after. And so you can kind of see how it just, you know, it really allows us to focus more on the subject matter as opposed to the mistake of not nailing the focus. If I want, last thing, I might just adjust the exposure a tiny bit to pull it up. Right about there is pretty solid. All right, so in short, images don't have to be perfect for them to be completely worth keeping. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you all in the next video.